Imagine stepping onto a plane, dressed in your finest suit, ticket in hand, ready for a simple flight. Now, imagine being told you don't belong not because of your ticket, not because of your status, but because of the color of your skin. That's exactly what happened to Marcus Grant, a black CEO seated quietly in 1A of Aurora Airlines' first-class cabin. At first, it looked like a minor dispute, a flight attendant demanding to see his credit card, a platinum passenger insisting that Marcus didn't belong. But what began as humiliation in front of strangers quickly spiraled into something far bigger. Because Marcus wasn't just any passenger. He wasn't just a man in a seat. He was the man holding the fate of the entire airline and a $500 million merger in his hands. What would you do if the power to change an industry rested on the moment you decided to resist? How far would you go to turn personal dignity into corporate accountability? Stay with us, because this is the story of how one man's refusal to move from Seat 1A shook the world. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's begin. The cabin of Aurora Airlines. Flight 726 shimmered with quiet luxury. Polished wood paneling framed the windows. Soft leather seats stretched wide, each one a small world of comfort. The hum of the engines was steady, like a low heartbeat beneath the silence. Most passengers in first class were already seated, sipping champagne or tapping on laptops, preparing for the 5-hour journey from New York to San Francisco. It was the kind of atmosphere where every detail suggested order, wealth, and privilege. That order cracked the moment a sharp female voice sliced through the calm. "Sir, you need to move." The words rang out with such authority that every head turned instantly. A silence fell, thick and heavy, as if the cabin itself held its breath. In Seat 1A, a tall black man in his late 40s looked up slowly from the newspaper folded neatly on his lap. His name was Marcus Grant, at 49 years old. Marcus carried himself with the poise of a man who had spent decades commanding boardrooms without ever needing to raise his voice. His dark gray suit fit flawlessly. His polished leather shoes shone under the cabin lights, and the silver watch on his wrist ticked with precise confidence. Everything about him spoke of discipline, success, and quiet authority. But to flight attendant Emily Foster, standing in the aisle with one hand on her hip, Marcus looked like something else, something she couldn't quite articulate. Or perhaps something she didn't dare say out loud. An intruder. "This seat," Emily said, her tone pitched deliberately high so the other passengers could hear, "is reserved for a premium passenger. A verified passenger." The implication was obvious, and it spread through the cabin like a chill. A man stood behind Emily, his arms folded and his mouth twisted into a smirk of irritation. His name was Thomas Whitaker, a platinum-level frequent flyer, the kind of traveler who wore his loyalty status like a crown. At 45, with slicked-back blonde hair and a watch that gleamed too brightly, he radiated entitlement. Finally, he thought, someone with common sense. He had been certain there had been a mistake. Surely, Seat 1A belonged to him. Emily lifted a finger and pointed straight at Marcus, the gesture sharp, almost accusatory. "I need to see your boarding pass and the credit card you used to purchase this ticket. First class requires transaction verification." The words struck the air like an indictment. Marcus's jaw tightened just slightly. It was the kind of reaction you could miss if you weren't paying attention. His eyes moved slowly, deliberately, to Emily's name tag, and then back to her face. He said nothing. The cabin shifted. Some passengers looked away, suddenly fascinated by their screens. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the unfolding tension. A few phones appeared, cameras already rolling. From seat 2C, a young woman lifted her phone higher. She was Sofia Ramirez, 27, with dark curls pulled into a bun and fire in her eyes. She tapped her screen. Live. Across the bottom, words flickered in real time. First-class discrimination, Aurora Airlines caught on camera. "Excuse me," Sofia said, her voice trembling but fierce. "This doesn't seem right. I'm live streaming. Just so you know." Emily snapped her head around, her voice sharp. "Put that phone away. Miss, this is an internal matter." Sofia shook her head. "No, this is racism, and I'm recording everything. Thomas Whitaker seized his chance. I have a $40 million deal waiting in San Francisco," he said loudly, as though the cabin were his stage. "We need this resolved now. As a platinum member, I should be prioritized." The word prioritized hung in the air like a rule written in stone. Marcus remained still, silent, but his leather briefcase bore a gold-embossed logo, Grant Holdings International. A folded Wall Street Journal on his lap displayed a headline that read, "Aurora Airlines Merger Vote Scheduled for Today." His phone buzzed once, a quiet reminder board members assembling for emergency session. He ignored it. Emily reached for Marcus's boarding pass, and he handed it to her with steady hands. The ticket was crisp, purchased 3 weeks ago. She held it to the light as though testing for forgery. "This could be fraud," she declared, her voice laced with suspicion. "We've seen fake documents before." Sofia's live stream pinged again. The viewer count ticked upward. 145, 276, 431. In seat 3A, an older woman leaned toward her husband and whispered, "This doesn't make sense." But when Marcus's eyes flicked toward her, she looked away quickly. Emily's voice rose, echoing off the cabin walls. "I'm still waiting for credit card verification. This is standard security protocol." The phrase security protocol gave the words a veneer of legitimacy, but even to the most casual listener, it rang hollow. Marcus inhaled slowly. His voice, when it came, was calm but firm, soft yet sharp. "So tell me, Miss Foster, what exactly about my appearance raises a security concern?" The question cut clean through the cabin. Emily froze, her prepared script slipping from her grasp. She stammered. "That's not what I meant. What I mean is we have procedures." "Procedures," Marcus interrupted gently, "that apply only to me." The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas shifted uncomfortably but forced a laugh, trying to reclaim authority. "This has nothing to do with race. It's just seat and policy." Marcus turned his gaze on him, steady, unblinking. "When was the last time you were asked to show your credit card, Mr. Whitaker?" Thomas faltered, his smirk fading. I'm platinum. The airline knows me." Marcus tilted his head, his eyes cool and unwavering. "Do they know you because of your frequent flyer record, or because you are white?" The words detonated in the cabin. Every passenger felt the impact. Sofia's live stream viewer count leapt again. 876, 1,240, 1,800. Comments flooded across the screen. "Sue them, name and shame. This is racism. Live." Emily's face paled. For the first time, the control she had wielded so confidently seemed to slip from her grasp. She tightened her hold on the ticket as though it were a lifeline, but her voice shook. "All you need to do is cooperate," she said, softer now, almost pleading. "We can rebook you on the next flight, first class as well." Marcus raised one eyebrow, the faintest trace of a smile playing on his lips. His voice, quiet yet cutting, slid through the silence. "Rebook me, on the very seat I already purchased. How generous." The murmur that rippled through the cabin felt like the beginning of a storm. The tension in the cabin did not fade. If anything, it grew heavier, pressing down on every passenger like unseen gravity. Marcus Grant remained seated in 1A, the folded newspaper resting neatly on his lap, his posture so composed it seemed deliberate. His calmness was unnerving. To those watching, it felt as if the man had stepped out of time, immune to the chaos swirling around him. Marcus had lived long enough to recognize this pattern: the polite suspicion, the condescending questions, the demand for proof when others were allowed to glide through unquestioned. He had faced it in hotels, at board meetings, even in restaurants. Each time, he had been forced to choose between swallowing his pride or standing up to expose the hypocrisy. Most times, he had let it pass. There were always bigger battles, but this time felt different. The weight of the cabin's eyes reminded him of his father, who once told him, "Son, you don't always get to choose when history calls you. Sometimes you're just sitting quietly, and it finds you anyway." His father had worked 30 years at a factory in Detroit, enduring insults and unfair treatment, yet never letting bitterness harden him. He taught Marcus that silence could be dignity, but it could also be consent. As Emily Foster stood in front of him clutching the ticket, Marcus felt that line blurring. Was his silence dignified, or was it surrender? He shifted slightly, leaning back against the leather seat. Every motion was unhurried, controlled. Passengers who watched him might have thought he was relaxed. But inside, a storm of calculations churned. If I stand up, I confirm what they already believe, he thought, that I don't belong. If I fight too hard, they will paint me as aggressive, disruptive, but if I remain still, if I let my words come only when necessary, perhaps the truth will reveal itself. His eyes wandered to the window. The afternoon sun glanced off the silver wing, scattering shards of light across the glass. For a moment, he focused on the reflection. He saw himself not as a CEO in a tailored suit, but as a boy sitting in the back of a bus, clutching his father's hand. That boy had promised he would grow into a man who would never beg for his seat. Thomas Whitaker cleared his throat behind Emily, impatient, frustrated at the delay. "We're wasting time," Thomas said loudly, his voice dripping with arrogance. "This gentleman clearly doesn't have the proper verification. Let's not hold up the flight." The word gentleman sounded less like respect and more like dismissal. Marcus turned his head slowly. His eyes met Thomas's, and, for a heartbeat, Thomas faltered. There was something about Marcus's gaze steady, piercing, but not angry, that stripped the arrogance away, leaving only discomfort. "You speak as though this is your decision," Marcus said softly. His voice was calm, but each word carried weight. "But I wonder, Mr. Whitaker, why are you so certain this seat belongs to you? Because you have platinum status, or because you expect men who look like me to sit somewhere else?" Thomas's jaw worked, but no sound came. The silence stretched, pulling taut across the cabin. From seat to sea, Sophia Ramirez lifted her phone higher, her live stream audience climbing into the thousands. Comments flashed across her screen. He's destroying them with words. Stay strong, sir. This is history unfolding. Emily broke the silence, her voice sharper than before, desperate to regain control. Mr. Grant, I'm only doing my job. I am following procedures. If you cooperate, we can all move on with our day. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Procedures. Tell me, Miss Foster, are those procedures written anywhere passengers can see, or are they only pulled out when certain people sit in certain seats? Emily flushed red. That's not what Marcus raised a hand gently, not to silence her, but to slow the conversation. You said this was about procedure. I'm asking you a simple question. Did you ask Mr. Whitaker for his credit card? Did you ask anyone else here for their proof of payment? The passengers shifted uncomfortably. A man in 4A cleared his throat but said nothing. An elderly woman in 3A whispered to her husband, "He's right. They never asked for that." Thomas bristled, desperate to claw back control. "I don't need to show my card. The airline knows me." Marcus's eyes narrowed, though his expression remained composed. "The airline knows you. Interesting. Does it know you because you spend money, or because you fit the image of who they believe belongs in this seat?" The question lingered, heavy and unavoidable. Sophia's live stream exploded with comments. "This is blatant. Expose them. Aurora Airlines is finished." Her viewer count surged past 3,000. Emily's hand trembled around the ticket. She looked around the cabin, hoping for support, but all she saw were cameras. Every passenger knew this was no longer a private matter. It was evidence. Marcus lowered his gaze to the folded newspaper on his lap. The headline still glared, "Aurora Airlines merger vote today, 2 p.m. His phone buzzed again, reminding him that board members were gathering in a downtown skyscraper at that very moment, waiting for his input. He silenced the alert. In that moment, Marcus faced a choice that pulled at him like two tides. One voice in his mind whispered, "End this. Hand them the card. Let it go. You have bigger battles than this. There's a merger worth $500 million waiting for you. Don't waste your energy on a seat." But another voice, stronger, steadier, answered, "If you let this pass, what message do you send? That dignity is negotiable, that injustice can be ignored if the price is right. You promised yourself long ago you would not remain silent, not when silence meant complicity." Marcus exhaled slowly. His decision was made. He lifted his eyes again, meeting Emily's gaze. His voice, though quiet, carried through the cabin like a low bell. "I am not moving. I am not handing you a credit card you did not ask of anyone else. If you wish to escalate, that is your choice. But understand this: every word, every action is being recorded, and it will not disappear." Gasps rippled through the cabin. The words were not loud, yet they struck with the force of a gavel. Sophia whispered into her phone, her hands trembling. "Oh my God, he's standing his ground. He's not budging." The live stream counter jumped again. 3,800, 4,200, 4,900. Emily's face hardened. Her voice quivered, but she pressed forward. "If you refuse to comply, I will have to call my supervisor, and if necessary, security." Marcus gave the faintest smile, one that held no humor. "Call them," he said, "and then explain why a paying passenger, seated quietly, reading his newspaper, was singled out for verification no one else was asked to provide. The air in the cabin thickened, heavy with anticipation. Everyone knew the moment was spiraling, that the calm luxury of first class had transformed into a stage where dignity itself was on trial. Thomas shifted restlessly. "This is absurd," he muttered, "completely absurd." But the strength in his voice had waned. His words sounded more like a plea than a declaration. Marcus leaned back slightly, as though reclaiming the space around him. He did not raise his voice. He did not pound the armrest or shout. Instead, he wielded silence and precision, turning calmness into a weapon sharper than any outburst. And for the first time since the confrontation began, Emily realized she was no longer in control. The glow of 1,000 tiny screens filled the cabin. What began as a tense moment between a passenger and a flight attendant was no longer confined to rows of leather seats and polished trays. It had spilled into the digital world, carried on Sofia Ramirez's trembling hands. Her phone streamed live, angled perfectly to capture Marcus Grant in seat 1A, his stillness radiating quiet defiance. The comments rolled in faster than she could read them. "Stay strong, brother. Expose them. This is why we record everything." She swallowed hard. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to lower the phone. If she looked away for even a second, the truth might vanish. She thought of her younger brother back home, who had told her stories of being followed in stores, pulled over for no reason, and told he did not belong. No one had listened to him. But if she kept her camera steady, maybe people would listen now. Emily Foster noticed the live stream, her jaw tightening. She snapped her voice across the cabin like a whip. "Miss, turn that phone off immediately. This is an internal airline matter. You do not have permission to record." Sophia's hand trembled, but she held the camera higher. "This isn't an internal matter," she said firmly. "This is racism. Everyone needs to see what's happening here." The passengers shifted, caught between discomfort and fascination. Some turned away, pretending not to hear. Others leaned in, eager for every detail. A businessman in 2A whispered, "This is going viral already." Emily clenched her teeth. "You're obstructing crew operations. Put the phone away." "No," Sophia shot back. Her voice cracked with nerves, but her eyes were blazing. "You don't get to silence this. Not this time." The viewer count climbed. 5,100, 6,700, 7,400. Meanwhile, Thomas Whitaker groaned loudly, throwing his arms up in exaggerated frustration. "Unbelievable," he muttered to no one in particular, but loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I have a $40 million deal waiting in San Francisco, and I'm stuck in a circus. This man should step aside. I don't care about his feelings. I care about business." Marcus lifted his head slowly, his gaze calm, unflinching. His voice, when it came, was low but cut through the noise. Business without dignity is failure waiting to happen. Thomas rolled his eyes. "Spare us the lecture. I've flown this route twice a month for 10 years. Never once did I have to go through this nonsense. If they're asking you for proof, there must be a reason." Marcus leaned slightly forward. "Yes, the reason is sitting right in front of you. Skin color." The words hit the cabin like a lightning strike. Even those who had tried to stay detached felt their stomachs knot. The live stream comments erupted. "He said it. This is history. We stand with him." Sophia's voice trembled, whispering into her mic as though narrating for the audience beyond the plane. Did you hear that he's calling it out? He's naming it. Oh my God, this is bigger than just a seat. This is about every single time people have been told they don't belong. Emily felt heat rising in her cheeks. Her authority was unraveling, but she pressed forward, raising her voice louder, harsher, as though volume could replace legitimacy. Sir, you are disturbing the order of the cabin. If you fail to comply with crew instructions, federal aviation regulations give us the right to remove you from this flight. Marcus remained motionless. Federal aviation regulations concern safety. Tell me, Miss Foster, what about my boarding pass and my skin tone threatens the safety of this aircraft? The cabin went silent again. Even the hum of the engines seemed distant, muted. For a moment, Emily had no answer. Her lips parted, but no words came. The script she had relied on for years had failed her. Thomas, desperate to fill the void, jumped in. Stop twisting the law. This is about seating priority. Platinum members like me deserve consideration. He doesn't. That's it. End of story. Marcus turned his head toward him, eyes steady, almost pitying. Tell me, Mr. Whitaker, when was the last time you were treated as though you did not belong? When was the last time you were asked to prove you had paid for what was already yours? Thomas sputtered, I'm Platinum. The airline knows me. Marcus tilted his head. They know you because you are Platinum, or because you are white. The question detonated again, and silence followed. Thomas's mouth opened and closed like a man gasping for words that would not come. Sophia's live stream counter ticked past 10,000 viewers. Her phone buzzed with notifications, retweets, shares, comments flooding every second. She whispered, It's trending. Oh my God, this is trending right now. The elderly woman in 3A spoke more loudly this time, her voice wavering with both courage and fear. He's right. This isn't fair. This isn't how first class is supposed to work. Emily's composure cracked. Her fingers dug into the ticket she still clutched as though it were evidence in a trial. She realized the more she spoke, the deeper the hole became. Yet her pride would not allow her to back down. Sir, she said, her voice sharp again, if you continue this behavior, I will have no choice but to escalate further. I can call security before we depart. Marcus exhaled slowly, his patience infinite. He placed the newspaper carefully into his briefcase, each motion precise, deliberate. When he looked up again, his voice was soft, almost gentle, yet carried the weight of iron. Call them, then, and when they arrive, explain why a man sitting quietly in the seat he paid for became a threat to your sense of order. The cabin collectively held its breath. Thomas muttered angrily, but his words no longer carried conviction. We're wasting time. Just get him out. Sophia whispered into her phone, her audience now surging to 15,000. He's not afraid. He's holding his ground. This isn't just a dispute. This is about power, and he's flipping it. Marcus leaned back slightly, folding his hands together, inside. A flicker of doubt gnawed at him. He thought of the board members waiting across the country, the merger documents sitting on polished tables, the billions of dollars at stake. Was he risking it all for a seat? But then he remembered his father's voice. Silence is consent. If you don't resist now, they will only grow bolder tomorrow. The doubt melted. His decision stood. Emily glanced toward the front of the cabin. Her hand hovered near the intercom button. She knew that once she pressed it, The situation would escalate beyond her control. Yet her pride screamed at her to act. She had to prove she was in charge. Her voice trembled as she addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are handling a passenger who's refusing to comply with crew instructions." The words landed like a false verdict, painting Marcus as the villain. Some passengers shook their heads. Others looked nervously toward Sophia's phone, aware the world outside was watching. Marcus's voice came again, calm and steady, cutting through her announcement. "No, Miss Foster, what you are handling is not a disruptive passenger. What you are handling is the truth, and the truth does not disappear just because you call it an inconvenience." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the engines seemed to wait. Sophia's live stream comments blazed. "Legend. He's rewriting the rules right now. Aurora Airlines is done." And, somewhere in the back of the plane, a passenger whispered words that many were too afraid to say aloud. "He's not just any man. You can feel it. He carries power." Marcus sat silently once more, his gaze steady, his presence immovable. Outside, the sun glared off the wing of the plane, dazzling and unyielding. Inside, the tension built like a storm waiting to break. The live stream counter flashed 20,000. The world was watching, and the cabin was about to ignite. The air in the cabin had shifted. What had begun as a quiet flight filled with the soft clink of champagne glasses now felt like the inside of a courtroom. Every eye was fixed on Marcus Grant in Seat 1A. Every word spoken hung heavy, recorded not only in the memory of those present but broadcast live to thousands watching through Sophia Ramirez's phone. Emily Foster tightened her jaw. The longer this dragged on, the less control she had. She could feel authority slipping like sand through her fingers, but she refused to let it go without a fight. She straightened her shoulders, raised her chin, and locked her eyes on Marcus. "I am repeating my instruction. Sir," she said loudly, "provide the credit card you used to purchase this seat or vacate immediately. This is standard airline procedure." Marcus remained silent for a moment, his eyes focused on the folded hands in his lap. When he finally spoke, his words were quiet but sharp enough to cut the air. "Standard procedure. Interesting phrase. Tell me, Miss Foster, do you have a record of which other passengers you asked to show their credit cards?" The cabin grew even quieter. If that was possible, Emily faltered. "That isn't relevant. I'm asking you now." "It is relevant," Marcus interrupted, his voice still calm, still level. "Because if I am the only passenger asked to prove I belong here, then this isn't about procedure. This is about me." Gasps rippled through the rows. Sophia's live stream counter leapt. 24,000, 26,000, 28,000. Comments flooded in, exposed them. "This man is brilliant. Hold your ground." Emily's face flushed. Her authority felt paper thin. But Thomas Whitaker, restless and irritated, seized the silence as his chance to press his advantage. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with exasperation. "Let's stop pretending this is complicated," Thomas declared. "I've been flying Aurora Airlines for over a decade. I am a platinum member. I earned that status with loyalty, with money, with years of investment. I know what first class looks like. And frankly, this man doesn't belong here." His words hung in the air like poison. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting from Thomas to Marcus to Sophia's phone. The implication was undeniable. Marcus raised his head slowly. turning his gaze directly on Thomas. There was no anger in his eyes, only an unsettling calm, the kind of calm that makes the guilty squirm. "Doesn't belong," Marcus repeated softly, almost as if tasting the words. "Tell me, Mr. Whitaker, what does belonging in first class look like to you? A loyalty badge, a certain net worth, or perhaps something as superficial as the color of a man's skin?" Thomas blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness. His mouth opened, but no words came. He stammered, I mean loyalty, platinum, status." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his voice low but audible to every ear. "Loyalty is earned through choice. Status is earned through money. But dignity is not earned. It is inherent, and it cannot be stripped away by a flight attendant with a clipboard or a businessman with a platinum badge." The cabin was utterly still. Even the flight attendants standing further back in the aisle looked uneasy, glancing at one another as if silently debating whether to intervene. Sophia whispered into her phone, her voice trembling with excitement. "Did you hear that he just destroyed them? This isn't just a man defending a seat. This is a man defending dignity itself." Her viewer count surged again. 32,000, 34,500, 36,000. Emily's voice grew shrill. "You are obstructing crew procedures. This is not about race. This is about compliance. If you don't follow instructions, you risk the safety and order of this cabin." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into the faintest trace of a smile. "Safety," he repeated. "Tell me, Miss Foster, how does asking me for a credit card improve the safety of this flight? Will it help the engines run? Will it keep the plane in the air?" The question landed like a hammer. No one dared laugh, but a few passengers pressed their lips together to keep from smiling. Emily swallowed hard, words failing her. Thomas jumped in again, desperate to reassert control. "Don't twist this around. This is about policy, not prejudice." Marcus's gaze flicked toward him, cool and unwavering. "Then show me the policy. Write it down, black and white. Produce the document that says paying passengers in first class must re-verify their purchase. If not, then what you're calling policy is nothing more than prejudice dressed in uniform." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke. Thomas shifted, his face flushed with heat, his jaw clenching. Sophia's phone buzzed in her hand. The viewer count hit 40,000. Comments flooded like a tidal wave, legend in 1A. "Aurora is finished. He's speaking for all of us." Emily's chest rose and fell rapidly. She was losing ground, losing the cabin, losing control. Yet still her pride held her upright. "Mr. Grant, I'm warning you. If you continue to resist, I will have no choice but to call the flight manager, and if that fails, airport security will remove you from this aircraft." Marcus leaned back, folding his arms loosely. His voice was so calm it was almost terrifying. "Then call them. But remember this, every word you say, every move you make is being recorded, and the world is already watching." Sophia's live stream surged again. 45,000, 47,000, 50,000. The passengers felt it too. The balance of power had shifted. Emily was no longer the authority in the room. Thomas was no longer the loudest voice. The quiet man in seat 1A, without ever raising his tone, had seized the entire stage. And the confrontation was only beginning. The cabin was no longer quiet. Whispers coursed through the rows, the soft buzz of passengers debating under their breath. phones were still raised like flowers turning toward the sun, recording every second of the standoff. To some, Marcus Grant looked like a man seated in defiance. To others, he was a mirror reflecting something they did not want to admit. Emily Foster clung to her authority like a lifeline. Her hands shook slightly, the boarding pass still trapped between her fingers as though it were a shield. Every instinct told her she was losing control, but she doubled down anyway. "That's it," she said, her voice trembling with forced sharpness. "I'm calling my supervisor." She pressed the intercom button, her tone clipped. "Patricia, I need you in first class. Immediately." A hush fell over the cabin. The word supervisor carried weight. It meant escalation. It meant consequences. Within moments, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the aisle. The sharp, deliberate rhythm of heels against the floor carried the authority of someone long accustomed to command. Then she appeared, Patricia Owens, the flight manager, at 53. Patricia was a woman carved by decades in the industry. Petite in frame but unyielding in posture. She walked with the quiet power of experience. Her silver hair was pinned neatly, her uniform pressed to perfection. She carried herself like someone who had seen every kind of passenger dispute imaginable. Or so she believed. "What's going on here?" Patricia asked. Her voice even calm but firm enough to silence the whispers. Emily rushed to speak before Marcus could. "This passenger has refused to comply with crew instructions," she said quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush. "He refuses to provide verification for his seat and is obstructing operational procedures." Patricia turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. She did not look at Emily, but at the man seated calmly in 1A. Marcus met her gaze. Steady, unreadable. "Is that correct?" Sir Patricia asked evenly. Marcus did not rush his reply. He opened his briefcase, placed the boarding pass gently inside, and closed it with a soft click. Then he looked directly at Patricia. "No, it is not correct. I have complied with every reasonable request. I provided my boarding pass. It is valid. I purchased this seat 3 weeks ago. What I have refused is to hand over a credit card, a demand no one else here has been asked to meet." Patricia's eyes flicked around the cabin. Cameras hovered. Passengers leaned in. Sofia Ramirez's phone glowed like a lighthouse, streaming every word to a digital sea of viewers. The numbers ticked upward, 50, 3000, 50, 5000, 57,000. Patricia cleared her throat. She could feel the eyes of both the cabin and the invisible online audience pressing against her. She folded her arms, weighing her words carefully. "Mr. Grant, our procedures sometimes require verification for high-value seats, particularly in special circumstances." Marcus tilted his head, his tone still soft, but each word struck like steel. "Special circumstances. And what precisely makes me a special circumstance? Miss Owens, my ticket or my skin?" The question cut the air in half. Several passengers gasped audibly. Sofia whispered into her phone, "He just said it outright. He's not dancing around it anymore. This is about race." Patricia's composure wavered for the first time. She took a breath, steadying herself. "Sir, please, let's not escalate this further. I have to ensure the safety and order of this flight." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his voice steady, unwavering. "Safety order. I'm sitting here, quietly, disturbing no one, reading the newspaper. Which part of that threatens the safety of this aircraft? Tell me, Miss Owens, What part of my behavior endangers this flight? The question hung in the silence. Patricia shifted, realizing the trap. Any answer she gave would sound hollow against the weight of reason. She glanced at Emily, who stood frozen, her confidence cracking under the weight of Marcus's calm. Thomas Whitaker pounced on the silence. "Enough of this," he said, throwing his hands up. "This is ridiculous. I have a meeting in San Francisco worth $40 million. The airline needs to fix this. I am platinum. I deserve priority." The arrogance in his voice turned several heads. An older man in 4B muttered under his breath. "Priority doesn't mean prejudice." His wife hushed him quickly, but the words were already caught by Sophia's microphone. Marcus's eyes locked onto Thomas. He spoke softly, almost kindly, but the edge in his words was unmistakable. "You say you deserve priority, Mr. Whitaker, but tell me, when was the last time you were asked to prove your worth before sitting down? When was the last time your dignity was treated as conditional?" Thomas's mouth opened, then closed. His face flushed red. He muttered something inaudible and leaned back in his seat, shrinking from the attention he once craved. Patricia exhaled slowly. She was losing the cabin, and worse, she knew it. She could feel the weight of the live stream, the invisible presence of tens of thousands of witnesses. She wanted to maintain control, but the longer she hesitated, the more the control slipped away. Her earpiece buzzed. A voice from the ground crew pressed into her ear. "We need a status update now. Stock prices are already fluctuating on merger rumors. Handle this quickly." Patricia's chest tightened. She was caught between two fires: the need to support her crew and the risk of inflaming something that was clearly bigger than a seat dispute. Her career balanced on a knife's edge. Sophia's voice whispered again, narrating to her viewers. "Look at her. She knows. She knows this isn't just about a seat anymore. This is about something much larger." Marcus sat still, his presence filling the cabin without movement, his calm a storm of its own. Inside, he wrestled with himself. Should he press harder? Should he reveal who he really was, or should he let them dig their own graves with their words? He thought of the merger again, of the board members waiting. Billions of dollars hung in the balance. Yet here, in this cabin, the stakes felt even higher. It wasn't just money, it was dignity. And dignity, he knew, was priceless. Patricia finally spoke again, her voice low, almost pleading. "Mr. Grant, please understand. We are under pressure to maintain order. If this escalates further, I will have no choice but to involve airport security." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, though his tone remained calm. Security. To do what? Remove a man sitting in the seat he paid for. If that is the story you want the world to see, then by all means, call them. But remember this: every second you hesitate, every word you speak is being recorded. Evidence is piling up, and I assure you, Miss Owens, I will not be the one explaining myself in court. A murmur spread through the cabin. Some passengers nodded faintly. Others sat stiffly, unsure where to place themselves in this unfolding drama. Sophia's livestream counter flashed again. 60,000, 62,000, 65,000. Patricia swallowed. Her authority had been built over decades, yet in this single moment, she felt it collapsing. She wanted to believe she could manage the situation, but the truth was undeniable control now rested with the man in seat 1A. Marcus leaned back again, his voice dropping low, calm, but with an edge sharp enough to draw blood. You are the manager, correct? Then manage, because if you continue to cover this, you will not just lose one passenger, you will lose far more. Patricia froze. She had no words. The cabin was silent, the kind of silence that felt like the pause before a storm, and everyone knew the storm was coming. The silence after Marcus's words was suffocating. Patricia Owens stood frozen, her arms crossed tightly across her chest as though the gesture could shield her from the weight pressing down on her. Around her, passengers shifted uneasily, unwilling to look away yet afraid to be pulled into the confrontation. Emily Foster hovered just behind Patricia, still clutching the boarding pass, her knuckles white. She had expected her supervisor's arrival to restore control, to silence the man in 1A with authority. Instead, Patricia seemed trapped, caught between her training and the undeniable truth Marcus had laid bare. Sofia Ramirez's phone trembled in her hand, the glow of her screen illuminating her determined face. The numbers on her live stream ticked higher and higher, like a clock counting down to an inevitable explosion. 70,000, 75,000, 80,000. Comments flew across the screen. He's unshakable. They're digging their own grave. Don't let them break you. Marcus. Patricia drew a breath, her voice brittle but firm. Mr. Grant, I'm giving you one final chance to comply with crew instructions. Provide your credit card for verification or step aside so that this flight may continue without further delay. Marcus looked up at her, his eyes calm but unyielding. And what if I don't? He asked quietly. Patricia hesitated. Her throat tightened. Then I will have no choice but to call security to remove you. The words dropped like stones into the silence. Passengers gasped softly. The word security carried danger with it. Everyone knew what it meant when armed officers boarded a plane. Tension could turn violent in an instant. Marcus exhaled slowly. He folded his hands together, resting them lightly on his lap. Call them, he said at last. His tone was steady, almost serene. But remember this, security does not erase discrimination. It only exposes it further, and with every camera recording, every live stream running, the truth will not vanish. It will spread. Emily shifted uncomfortably, her confidence eroding with every second Marcus refused to bend. She wanted to scream, to order him out of the seat, but something about his composure stopped her. He wasn't just resisting. He was dismantling her authority piece by piece without raising his voice. Thomas Whitaker broke the tension, his patience gone. This is madness, he barked. We're wasting time on theatrics. He doesn't belong in that seat. I have business in San Francisco worth more than his entire company. His words dripped with disdain, but they landed poorly. Passengers frowned. A young woman in row 2 whispered, "How does he know what company the man runs?" Marcus turned toward Thomas, his expression still calm, but his eyes glinted with something harder. "You speak of business, Mr. Whitaker, as though dollars define dignity. You say you have a meeting worth millions. I ask you, what is the worth of respect? What value do you place on human dignity?" Thomas smirked, though his voice wavered. "Respect doesn't get me contracts. Money does." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Money without respect is a fragile empire. One headline, one live stream, one viral moment, and your millions evaporate." Thomas flinched. The words hit closer than he wanted to admit. Sofia whispered into her phone, almost reverent, "He's turning the whole cabin into a lesson. He's teaching them in real time. The viewer count surged again. 85,000, 90,000, 95,000. Patricia's earpiece crackled. "Update," the voice from the ground demanded. "What's happening? We're getting calls. Social media is exploding. Handle it now." Her pulse quickened. The pressure to act was crushing, but her instincts screamed that every step forward was a trap. If she called security, Marcus would use it to prove his point. If she backed down, she would look weak and risk her crew's trust. "Mr. Grant," Patricia said, her voice lower now, almost imploring. "This isn't the place for a debate. We have a flight to run, people to transport safely. Please, don't make this harder than it has to be." Marcus tilted his head, his gaze unwavering. "Harder? No, Miss Owens, I'm not making this hard. The prejudice of your crew is. The silence of those who look away is. The arrogance of men who believe loyalty badges are crowns is. I am merely sitting here, refusing to surrender what I have already paid for." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Passengers shifted, uneasy, but some nodded. The weight of his words could not be ignored. Emily's frustration boiled over. She snapped, her voice sharp and cutting. "Why are you making this about race? This is about rules, Mr. Grant. Rules everyone must follow." Marcus's eyes narrowed, though his tone never rose. "Rules. Show me one other person you've asked for a credit card. Show me the rule book that says I must surrender proof twice when my white counterpart is waved through without question. You cannot, because it does not exist. What exists is your bias." The silence after his words was deafening. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Sophia's phone buzzed again. 100,000 viewers. 110. The comment section erupted. "Exposed. She has no answer. This is systemic racism caught live." Thomas leaned forward, desperate to redirect the fury building against him. "This is ridiculous. He's twisting things. This isn't racism. It's about order. He's making a scene just to look important." Marcus turned his head slowly, his eyes locking onto Thomas with chilling steadiness. "You think I want this scene? You think I enjoy being singled out, humiliated, accused of fraud for daring to sit in a seat I paid for? No, Mr. Whitaker, I'm not making myself important. Your prejudice is doing that for me." Thomas opened his mouth to retort, but the words caught in his throat. He sank back into his seat, his face pale. Patricia felt the walls closing in. The authority she had spent years cultivating now felt fragile, brittle. Every move seemed destined to backfire. She considered the faces watching her, the silent cameras, the endless stream of viewers online. There was no safe path. She pressed her earpiece again, whispering, "What do you want me to do?" The voice from the ground was sharp. "If he refuses to comply, call airport security. End it before takeoff. We cannot risk delay." Patricia swallowed hard. She looked at Marcus again. He sat still, his posture relaxed, but the weight of his presence filled the cabin. Something in her gut told her he was no ordinary passenger. She didn't know who he was, but his confidence was unshakable, as though he carried power no uniform could erase. Her hand hovered near the intercom, trembling slightly. She thought of her career, her pension, her reputation. One wrong move could end it all, but doing nothing felt just as dangerous. Sophia's voice, whispering into her phone, sliced through Patricia's thoughts. She's about to call security. Look at her hand. "Everyone, watch this. They're about to drag a black man out of first class for sitting in the seat he paid for." The live stream exploded. 120,000, 130, 140. The world was watching, waiting. Patricia's chest tightened. She pressed the button. Her voice, though steady, quivered underneath. "Flight deck, this is Patricia. I need airport security at the gate immediately. Passenger in 1A is refusing to comply." Gasps swept through the cabin. Marcus leaned back, his eyes narrowing, his voice soft but dangerous. "So, this is the choice you make. To summon force against quiet resistance, to turn dignity into a crime." Sophia whispered into her mic, her voice almost breaking. "They just called security. Oh my God, they really did it." The counter hit 150,000. The cabin was no longer just a cabin. It had become an arena, and the storm that Marcus had warned was about to break wide open. The first-class cabin fell into a heavy silence. Patricia Owens had pressed the button, her request for security echoing in the air like a summons to war. Everyone knew what it meant when officers boarded a plane, even before they arrived. The tension twisted into something sharper, a collective fear that things could spiral out of control in seconds. The sound of heavy footsteps approached from the jet bridge. Then they appeared two uniformed officers in dark navy, their belts weighted with radios and batons. Officer Collins, older and broad-shouldered, carried himself with the rigid authority of decades in law enforcement. Beside him, Officer Delgado, younger, moved with sharp precision, his eyes scanning the cabin with practiced suspicion. The passengers stiffened. Phones were raised higher, ready to capture the clash. Sophia Ramirez's live stream counter surged past 180,000. Comments flew in like lightning. "Stay calm, brother. They always bring force when words fail. We see you. Marcus." Collins stepped forward, his voice firm and unquestioning. "We received a report of a disruptive passenger. Sir, I need you to stand and come with us." Emily exhaled in relief, finally feeling backup at her side. "Yes, that's him," she said quickly, pointing at Marcus. "He's refused to comply, refused to provide documents, and he's obstructing the crew." Delgado's hand hovered near his baton, ready to escalate at the slightest provocation. Collins nodded, already moving closer to Marcus's seat, but Marcus did not move. He lifted his eyes slowly, his face calm, his body composed. His voice, when it came, was deep and steady, resonating like a current beneath the surface. "Before you write a single line in your report," he said, "hear me clearly. I was sitting in the seat I purchased, reading a newspaper. The crew demanded I provide additional documents not asked of any other passenger in this cabin. And the reason my appearance was inconvenient." The words hung heavy, drawing a visible flinch from Emily. Patricia shifted, her face paling as she realized Marcus had pulled the officers into the same trap he had set for her. Collins frowned, his certainty shaken by the calm articulation. He had expected shouting, resistance, chaos. Instead, he was faced with a man whose composure radiated quiet authority. Thomas Whitaker leaned forward, seizing the moment. "Don't listen to him," he said quickly, his voice sharp. "This is just theatrics. It's not about race, it's about rules. He's holding up the entire flight. Remove him so we can leave." Marcus turned his head slowly, his gaze settling on Thomas with the weight of stone. "Then present the rule," he said softly. "Write it down. Produce it. If not, then everything you've said is nothing but arrogance disguised as order." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Delgado shifted his weight, his eyes flicking to the cameras raised around the cabin. He could feel them like a spotlight, recording every blink, every twitch. Marcus pressed on, his voice calm but laced with fire. Do you know that under Title II of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, any denial of service based on discrimination is a federal violation? Do you know that under 49 U.S. Code Section 40127 airlines are prohibited from discriminating against passengers based on race, color, or nationality? The cabin went utterly still. The words carried the weight of law, undeniable and immovable. Collins hesitated. Delgado's hand moved away from his baton, uncertainty flickering across his face. Sophia's live-stream counter exploded. 200,000, 210, 220. The comments erupted in capital letters. He knows the law. They can't touch him. Exposed live on camera. Patricia's chest tightened. She had spent years enforcing policies, but never once had she faced a passenger who dismantled them with such precision. Every word Marcus spoke made her training feel small, inadequate. Emily snapped, her pride unraveling. "You're obstructing flight operations," she said, her voice sharp, desperate. "This isn't about discrimination, it's about compliance. You are a danger to this flight." Marcus's head tilted slightly, his calm presence unbroken. "A danger," he repeated softly. "I am sitting quietly, with my newspaper, disturbing no one. The only danger here is the prejudice of your assumptions. The obstruction is not me. The obstruction is the discrimination coming from your own staff." The words fell like a verdict. Several passengers nodded quietly, their discomfort shifting into agreement. The elderly woman in 3A, silent until now, leaned forward and whispered loud enough for others to hear. "He's right. This isn't the first time I've seen this. It has to stop." Emily's face drained of color. She knew the tide of the cabin was turning against her. Marcus looked back at the officers, his voice calm but resonant. "You were called here to remove a disruptive passenger. But what you found is not disruption, it is dignity refusing to be erased. If you write in your report that I was removed, what will you say? That I was sitting too quietly, that I was too calm?" Collins shifted uneasily. He was used to order, to authority unquestioned. But the weight of the cameras, the weight of Marcus's words pressed on him like gravity. Delgado cleared his throat, his voice uncertain. "Sir, maybe if you just showed the card, we could end this." Marcus's eyes moved to him, not unkindly, but with a piercing clarity. "And how many passengers in this cabin have you asked for the same one too? Or only the man whose skin makes you suspicious?" Delgado froze. He had no answer. Sophia's voice trembled with intensity, narrating into her phone. "Do you hear this? He's cornering them. They can't answer. They know it. This isn't a passenger fight anymore. This is a courtroom at 30,000 feet, 250,000, 280, 300,000. The live stream was now a global event. Thomas snapped again, his face red, his words shaken. "Enough. Enough of this. He's making fools of you. He's making fools of all of us. Get him off this plane. I don't care how. Just get him out." Marcus turned toward him, a faint smile crossing his lips. "No, Mr. Whitaker. What I'm doing is making you face a truth you've spent your life ignoring. The truth that the seat does not define the man, but how a man behaves defines whether he deserves the seat." Gasps swept through the cabin. Collins finally spoke, his voice heavy, conflicted. "Sir, I need to confirm with command before we take any action." He pressed his radio, his voice low. "Control, this is Collins. Passenger in 1A is calm, seated, not disruptive. Situation not as reported. Request clarification before proceeding." Static crackled. Then a sharp voice replied, "Stand by. Corporate is monitoring this directly. Do not move until further instruction." Patricia froze. Corporate. Her stomach dropped. This had already escalated far beyond her. Marcus leaned back in his seat, folding his hands together. His voice dropped low, almost a whisper, but Sophia's microphone caught every word. The real game has only just begun. The cabin sat in a suspended silence. Officer Collins' radio had crackled with a message no one expected corporate was monitoring. That single word corporate shifted the atmosphere entirely. This was no longer about Marcus Grant and a first-class seat. It was about Aurora Airlines itself, a company whose reputation now hung by a single thread, unraveling in real time under the glow of thousands of phones. Patricia Owens's chest tightened. She had faced emergencies before: turbulence, medical crises, unruly passengers, but nothing like this. Never had she felt the invisible weight of millions of eyes pressing against her through screens, watching every breath, every glance, every hesitation. Emily Foster shrank back, her earlier confidence gone. Her hands trembled as she clutched her clipboard, mascara smudging under her eyes. She could feel her career slipping, each mistake magnified under the live stream's relentless glare. Thomas Whitaker, once smug in his entitlement, now looked unsettled. He straightened his tie, but the gesture betrayed his nerves. He wanted to remain the authority, the voice of reason. But Marcus's calm dismantling of every argument had left him exposed. And Marcus sat in seat 1A, perfectly still, perfectly composed. His leather briefcase rested by his side, his newspaper folded neatly atop it. He didn't have to shout, he didn't have to gesture. His presence alone commanded the space, as if the cabin itself bent around his calm gravity. Officer Collins pressed his radio again. "Control, this is Collins. Please confirm instructions. Passenger is calm. Situation is not violent." The static buzzed before a clipped voice answered. "Hold position. Do not engage. Executives are aware. Will advise." Passengers murmured. The elderly woman in 3A leaned toward her husband. "Executives. They're watching this." Her husband nodded, his expression grim. "This is bigger than the flight now," Sophia Ramirez whispered into her phone, narrating to her 300,000-strong audience. "Everyone, listen. Corporate just got involved. The CEO must know by now. This is no longer a flight issue. It's a company crisis. This is history. The counter climbed. 320,000, 350, 380. The comments raced. Aurora is finished. This is the fall of an airline. Marcus Grant is rewriting the rules live. Patricia's earpiece buzzed again. She pressed it, her voice barely steady. "This is Owens. What are my instructions?" The voice on the other end was sharp, urgent. "Do not escalate. CEO Jonathan Pierce is dialing in directly. Stand by for communication." Her heart skipped. Jonathan Pierce. The name alone carried weight. A man known for his iron grip on the company, for his ruthless cost-cutting and his obsession with market share. If he was dialing in, this wasn't damage control. It was survival. A flight attendant hurried forward. carrying a satellite phone linked through the plane's systems. Patricia took it with trembling hands. The line crackled. Then a voice came, deep, commanding, but edged with strain. "This is Jonathan Pierce," it said. The cabin went still. Even the passengers who had tried to avoid involvement now leaned forward, drawn by the gravity of the voice. Phones zoomed in, live streams capturing every flicker of expression. Marcus lifted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. His voice was low but resonant. "Jonathan Pierce. I wondered how long it would take before you appeared." Patricia froze. How did he know the CEO's name so casually? Her gut twisted. Who exactly was Marcus Grant? Jonathan's voice crackled through the speaker. "Mr. Grant, we've been informed of an incident on Flight 227. Let me assure you, we take these matters seriously. If there's been a misunderstanding, I apologize. We'll resolve this quickly and quietly." Marcus leaned back in his seat, his smile faint, cold. Quietly, "No, Mr. Pierce. Nothing about this is quiet. The world is watching. Your airline's bias has already been broadcast to hundreds of thousands. Do you really believe silence can erase what is already etched in memory?" The live stream counter surged again. 400,000, 450, 500,000. Jonathan hesitated. His voice carried the practiced calm of a CEO, but cracks formed beneath the surface. "Mr. Grant, please, let's not turn this into something bigger than it is." Marcus's tone sharpened, though his volume never rose. "Bigger? This is not about me alone. This is about every passenger told they do not belong. Every voice silenced by policies that exist only in the mouths of those who enforce them selectively. You think this is small, but it is enormous, and it is yours to answer for." Patricia's pulse hammered in her ears. Emily looked like she might collapse. Thomas fidgeted in his seat, sweat gathering at his temples. Sophia's voice whispered into her phone. "Do you hear this? He's talking directly to the CEO. This isn't a seat dispute anymore. This is a reckoning." The comments exploded. "Expose him. Marcus, he's shaken at the top. This is how change begins." Jonathan's voice hardened. "Mr. Grant, what do you want?" Marcus paused. The question lingered. What did he want? For a brief moment, he thought of his father's words, of his own internal battles. Was he here to punish, to humiliate, to destroy? Or was he here for something greater, for dignity, for systemic change? His silence stretched, thick with tension. Then he spoke, each word deliberate, cutting through the air like a blade. "I want accountability. I want reform. I want an airline that does not treat skin color as a security risk. I want your company to understand that dignity is not optional. It is essential." Jonathan faltered. His voice was quieter now. "Mr. Grant, you're asking for systemic change on a phone call." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes burning. "No, I am demanding it, and I have the leverage to make it happen." The cabin shivered. Everyone felt the shift. Marcus wasn't bluffing. He wasn't simply a passenger. There was something more, something powerful behind his words. Thomas, desperate to reclaim the moment, blurted out, "He's bluffing. He's just another angry customer trying to milk attention." Marcus turned toward him, his smile almost pitying. "You still don't understand, Mr. Whitaker. This isn't about attention. This is about influence, and mine reaches far beyond this cabin." Patricia's hands trembled. A thought flickered in her mind, terrifying in its implications. What if this man wasn't just a passenger? What if he had real power over Aurora Airlines? Sophia whispered into her phone, her voice rising with excitement. Everyone, I think he's more than he seems. I think this man has real power over the company. Watch this carefully. The live stream counter flashed again. 600,000, 650, 700,000. Jonathan's voice, tight with unease, came again. Mr. Grant, please, if you have a specific request, state it. We will address this. Marcus's voice was calm, unshakable. Very well. I will state my demands. But understand this, Mr. Pierce, they are not requests. They are terms. Terms you will accept, or your airline will face consequences far greater than a viral video. The cabin erupted in whispers. Passengers exchanged wide-eyed glances. Emily's knees buckled, and she gripped the seat back for support. Patricia felt sweat bead on her forehead. Jonathan's silence on the other end spoke volumes. He understood. He was not speaking to an ordinary customer. He was speaking to a man who held something dangerous, something that could bring Aurora Airlines to its knees. Marcus leaned back, his voice resonant, final. This is no longer about a seat. This is about survival, and the choice is yours. The cabin froze. The live stream blazed. The world held its breath, and Aurora Airlines teetered on the edge of collapse. The cabin had transformed into something no one could have imagined when they boarded the flight that morning. What began as a petty dispute over a boarding pass now felt like the epicenter of a global storm. Cameras pointed like searchlights. Live streams ticked upward relentlessly. 750,000 viewers, 800,000, 850. Every passenger could feel it. Something monumental was coming. Marcus Grant remained in seat 1A, calm as stone, his briefcase resting on the tray table before him. His voice had already dismantled procedure, exposed bias, and shaken the authority of everyone who had challenged him. Now. The CEO's voice crackled faintly through the satellite phone connection, waiting, almost pleading for Marcus to state his demands. Jonathan Pierce, usually iron-willed, sounded strained, his words tight. Mr. Grant, you said you have leverage. If you intend to make threats, I advise you to reconsider. Aurora Airlines cannot be held hostage by one passenger. Marcus's lips curved faintly, his tone smooth but edged with steel. Hostage? No, Mr. Pierce, you misunderstand. I am not holding this airline hostage. I am holding it accountable. There is a difference. Patricia Owens shifted uneasily. Emily Foster looked pale, her hands shaking. Thomas Whitaker leaned forward, eager to dismiss Marcus as a fraud, but his confidence faltered as Marcus slowly lifted his briefcase and set it on the table with a deliberate click. The sound reverberated through the cabin like a gavel. Every camera zoomed in. Sophia Ramirez whispered into her phone, "Everyone, he's opening the briefcase. Something's happening. Oh my God, what's inside?" The clasp snapped open. Marcus reached in with deliberate slowness, drawing out a thick folder embossed with a silver seal. He placed it gently atop the briefcase, spreading the pages out so the front cover was visible to every camera in the cabin. The words gleamed under the cabin lights. Aurora Airlines merger agreement. Valuation $500 million. Gasps erupted. Patricia staggered back a step. Emily clutched the seat beside her for balance. Thomas's eyes widened, his face draining of color. Marcus looked up, his voice calm, deliberate, resonant. These documents represent a merger deal worth $500 million. And he paused, letting the words settle, am the man who decides whether it succeeds or whether Aurora Airlines collapses under its own arrogance. The cabin erupted in murmurs, disbelief colliding with awe. Sophia's live stream counter surged past 900,000, then 1 million, 1 million, 100,000, 1 million, 200. The comments exploded in a flood. He owns the deal. This isn't a passenger, this is power incarnate. History unfolding live. Thomas leapt to his feet, his voice shaking with desperation. You're bluffing. This is a trick. No one would risk $500 million over a seat dispute. Marcus turned his gaze on him. Steady, cold. $500 million is a transaction. Mr. Whitaker, dignity is priceless. Which one do you think will outlast the other? Thomas faltered, words dying in his throat. He sank back into his seat, sweat shining on his forehead. Jonathan Pierce's voice crackled through the phone, tighter now, edged with fear. Mr. Grant, are you saying you're involved in this merger directly? Marcus leaned back, folding his hands over the file. Involved? No, Mr. Pierce. I am not merely involved. I am the decision maker. I hold 12% of Aurora Airlines through Washington Equity Partners. I hold the vote that determines your future. And today, I hold every camera in this cabin, every eye across the world, as witness to your failure. Patricia's knees weakened. She had suspected Marcus was powerful, but never had she imagined this. The man they had tried to evict was the very man whose pen could decide whether their airline lived or died. Sophia whispered breathlessly into her phone. Everyone, do you understand what this means? He's not just a CEO. He's the investor controlling Aurora's future. The people who tried to kick him out are about to beg for his mercy. The live stream exploded again. 1,500,000, 1,600,000. The comment feed blurred with fury, awe, and disbelief. Emily's voice cracked as she tried to salvage her authority. You should have said something earlier. If we had known who you were, Marcus cut her off, his tone sharp. If I had been white, you wouldn't have needed to know. Respect is not reserved for names on contracts or numbers on spreadsheets. Respect should have been granted the moment I showed my boarding pass. Emily's lips trembled. She had no reply. Jonathan Pierce's voice carried through the phone, laced with panic now. Mr. Grant, please, whatever mistakes have been made here today, we will correct them. We will issue apologies. We will compensate you personally if necessary. Just don't tie this to the merger. It's too important to too many people. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Important. Important to your shareholders, to your executives. What about the ordinary passengers you humiliate daily? What about those whose dignity you erase without cameras to protect them? The cabin was dead silent. Marcus's words sliced through, leaving no shield intact. Patricia felt tears prick her eyes. She had spent her career believing in the system, in rules and procedures. But now, under Marcus's steady gaze, she saw what those procedures had done, how they had become weapons, how they had been used to justify cruelty. Thomas muttered under his breath, but the words carried enough to be heard. This can't be real. Marcus looked at him, his smile faint but deadly. Oh, it's real, and the sooner you accept it, the sooner you'll understand that the world has changed. power is no longer defined by loyalty cards or platinum badges. Power is defined by the ability to expose truth and to reshape what comes after. The live stream counter flashed again. 2 million, 2 million, 100, 2 million, 200. Sophia's eyes burned with tears as she whispered into her phone. I've never seen anything like this. A man humiliated for his skin color just revealed he controls $500 million of this airline's future. And he's holding them accountable live. Jonathan Pierce's voice came again. Quieter now, almost pleading. Mr. Grant. What do you want? Marcus's eyes locked on the satellite phone, his tone deliberate, sharp as a blade. I want change, not an apology, not compensation. Change, systemic, irreversible change. And you will agree to it, or Aurora Airlines will collapse under the weight of its prejudice. Gasps swept through the cabin. Patricia's heart pounded. Emily's breathing quickened. Thomas buried his face in his hands, and Marcus sat calmly. His words reverberated like a verdict. This was never about a seat. This is about dignity. And dignity is the most valuable asset you will ever own. The air inside the cabin felt charged, as if every breath carried static. Phones remained fixed, lenses glowing, live stream counters climbing toward 2.5 million viewers. Each second stretched long, thick with anticipation. Marcus Grant sat steady in seat 1A, his presence commanding without movement. The merger documents lay open on the tray table, their embossed seal glinting under the cabin lights. Across the satellite line, Aurora Airlines CEO Jonathan Pierce waited, his voice taut with unease. Mr. Grant, Jonathan said carefully, you've made your position clear. You want change. Tell me what that means. What are you asking? Marcus exhaled slowly, leaning forward, his fingers resting lightly on the folder as if grounding himself in the weight of it. Not asking, he corrected, his tone calm but cutting. Demanding, and you will listen carefully, because these terms are not optional. They are the price of survival. The cabin stilled. Every passenger felt the gravity of what was coming. Even Officer Collins, who had stood rigid at the front, shifted his stance as though preparing to record history in his mind. Sophia Ramirez whispered breathlessly into her phone. Everyone. He's about to lay it out. This is it. The terms of the deal. The terms of dignity. Marcus raised one hand, counting with deliberate precision. First, he said, his voice firm. Every crew member involved in this incident will be terminated immediately, not suspended, not hidden behind corporate training. Terminated. Accountability begins at the source, and the world will see whether Aurora values justice over protectionism. Emily Foster gasped softly, her face draining of color. Terminated, she whispered under her breath. Patricia Owens stiffened, her throat tightening, fear flashing across her eyes. Jonathan's voice crackled through the line. Mr. Grant, that's extreme. Surely disciplinary action would know. Marcus cut in, his tone sharp as a gavel. Extreme was humiliating a paying passenger because of the color of his skin. Extreme was threatening force against dignity. Termination is the minimum response. Silence followed. Sophia's live stream flooded with comments. Fire them now. No mercy. Accountability first. Marcus lowered his second finger. Second, every frontline employee from gate agents to flight attendants will undergo intensive, in-person bias awareness and civil rights training. Not an online module. Not a slideshow to click through. Real, meaningful education from experts who understand the human cost of prejudice. Patricia's heart pounded. She thought of her colleagues, of the resistance that would meet such a policy. But she also felt a sliver of hope. Perhaps real change was possible, even if it came at the price of humiliation. Jonathan hesitated, his voice strained. That level of training, across our global network, it would cost millions. Marcus's gaze hardened. You've already spent millions settling discrimination lawsuits. The only difference is whether you pay to defend prejudice or to dismantle it. The live stream counter flashed again. 2,700,000. 2,800,000. The comments screamed approval. Teach them, train them, no excuses. Marcus raised a third finger. Third, every customer-facing employee will wear body cameras during duty hours. Every interaction will be recorded, uploaded to secure servers, and monitored by independent third parties. Transparency will no longer be optional. It will be permanent. A ripple of gas moved through the cabin. Thomas Whitaker muttered, his voice sharp, "What do you want to do? Turn the airline into the police." Marcus turned his head, his expression cold but calm. "No, Mr. Whitaker, I want to turn it into a responsible company. The cost of cameras is a fraction of the lawsuits you've paid, and far less than the billions you could lose from one viral injustice. Prevention is cheaper than damage control." Sophia whispered fiercely into her phone. "He's not just fighting prejudice, he's turning it into economics. He's making the math impossible to ignore." Marcus lifted his fourth finger. "Fourth, mandatory diversity audits will be conducted every quarter, and the results will be made public. No edits, no spin. The people will see Aurora Airlines as it is, not as it pretends to be." Patricia felt her stomach twist. Public audits meant no hiding, no burying of complaints, but a strange clarity settled inside her, too. Maybe this was what it would take to clean the rot. Jonathan's voice faltered. Public audits could destabilize investor confidence. Marcus cut him off again, his tone steady. "You're worried about investors. Investors crave stability, and nothing destabilizes faster than scandal. Transparency is not your enemy. Secrecy is." The live stream comments erupted again. "Yes, public now. Expose everything. No more cover-ups. Finally." Marcus raised his last finger. "Fifth, any discrimination complaint filed by a passenger will bypass middle management entirely and reach executive level within 24 hours. If such complaints repeat, the board of directors themselves will be accountable. No more burying grievances in bureaucracy." The silence that followed was suffocating. 5 demands. 5 ultimatums. Jonathan Pierce's voice broke through after a long pause. Lower now, almost pleading. "Mr. Grant, these conditions, they would overhaul our entire operations. They would reshape Aurora from the ground up. 90 days is not enough time." Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm, deliberate, unyielding. 90 days is generous. You've had decades to fix this, and you chose not to. Now, the world is watching. 90 days or Aurora Airlines will collapse under the weight of my divestment. And the truth I will speak. The words slammed into the cabin like a hammer. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Emily stared at the floor, trembling. Thomas sat frozen, his arrogance stripped away. Even the officers at the front of the cabin looked subdued, as if they too felt the inevitability of Marcus's power. Sophia's phone buzzed violently in her hand. 3 million viewers. 3,200,000. 3,500,000, she whispered into her mic, her voice breaking. Everyone, you just heard it. 5 demands, 90 days. He's forcing systemic change on a $500 million airline live in front of all of us. Jonathan's silence stretched long, broken only by the faint shuffle of papers on the other end. Then his voice returned, heavier, resigned. Mr. Grant, if we accept your terms, will you allow the merger to proceed? Marcus's expression softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. You accept my terms, and Aurora Airlines will not only survive, it will be reborn. Dignity will become your most valuable asset. Fail, and you will become a cautionary tale. Patricia bowed her head, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. For the first time in her career, she felt both the sting of failure and the fragile spark of hope. Emily covered her face with her hands, mascara streaking her cheeks. She understood her career was over, but perhaps her downfall would mean something greater. Thomas whispered hoarsely, almost to himself. This is insane. He's rewriting the rules of the entire industry from a single seat. Marcus glanced at him, his voice calm, almost tender. Sometimes, Mr. Whitaker, it only takes one seat to change the course of history. The cabin held its breath. On the other end of the line, Jonathan Pierce's voice trembled with reluctant acceptance. Mr. Grant, the board will have to vote, but I will recommend compliance. Marcus leaned back, his voice carrying finality. Not compliance, Mr. Pierce. Commitment. Dignity is not a policy you adopt. It is a standard you live by. 90 days, no excuses. The cabin erupted in whispers, in awe, in disbelief. And Marcus Grant, seated calmly in 1A, had just rewritten the future of Aurora Airlines. The cabin of Flight 227 no longer felt like an aircraft bound for San Francisco. It had become a courtroom, a stage, and a battlefield all at once. The hum of the engines beneath the floor was drowned out by the thunder of silence, a silence thick with awe, shame, fear, and something new, rising respect. Marcus Grant closed the folder containing the $500 million merger documents, sliding it carefully back into his briefcase. The click of the metal clasp echoed through the cabin like the closing of a verdict. He leaned back in seat 1A, his face calm, his posture unshaken, as though the weight of the past hour had not touched him at all. But for everyone else, the weight was crushing. Patricia Owens stood frozen near the aisle, her hands trembling as she held the satellite phone. She had spent 25 years in aviation, priding herself on control, on composure, on her ability to manage chaos. Yet here she was, exposed, powerless, reduced to a symbol of a failing system. Her eyes burned with tears, but she blinked them back, unwilling to collapse in front of the passengers she had once commanded. Emily Foster sat slumped against the wall, her mascara streaked, her clipboard forgotten on the floor. Just minutes ago, she had been the loudest voice, insisting on compliance, enforcing rules that weren't rules at all. Now, stripped bare, she could feel the judgment of every lens pointed at her, her career, her reputation gone in an instant. A hollow ache opened inside her chest. Thomas Whitaker remained in his seat, staring straight ahead. The platinum badge that once gave him pride now felt like a scarlet letter burning against his blazer. His arrogance had melted into humiliation. For years, he had lived in entitlement, believing loyalty points and business deals made him superior. Now, before millions, He had been unmasked. Sofia Ramirez's phone shook in her hand as she whispered into the microphone, 3.8 million viewers. Nearly 4 million people are watching this. History is unfolding in Seat 1A. Her voice quivered, not just with the excitement of a viral stream, but with the weight of knowing she was witnessing something far greater than internet fame. The elderly woman in row 3A reached across the aisle and touched Patricia's arm gently. "He's right, you know," she said softly, her voice trembling but resolute. "This isn't just about him. This is about all of us, about every time we stayed quiet when we should have spoken." Patricia's throat tightened. The kindness in the woman's tone made the truth cut deeper. Officer Collins, the older of the two security men, stepped forward. His voice was steady, but his eyes revealed unease. "Mr. Grant," he said, "we've been ordered to file a preliminary report. Would you like to make a statement for the record?" Marcus lifted his eyes, his gaze calm, deliberate. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice carrying through the cabin without effort. "For the record, I was seated in 1A, the seat I purchased. I was singled out because of the color of my skin. I was threatened with removal, with force, despite being calm and compliant. This is not a misunderstanding. This is systemic, and this will change." Collins nodded, scribbling the words down, though his hand shook as if he knew the document he wrote would live forever in courtrooms and boardrooms alike. Officer Delgado, younger, shifted uneasily, his earlier confidence shattered. He had walked onto this plane expecting to subdue a disruptive passenger. Instead, he had found a man who dismantled injustice with words sharper than any weapon. Jonathan Pierce's voice, still on the line, broke through the heavy silence. "Mr. Grant, the board is reviewing your demands as we speak. I cannot promise speed, but I will promise seriousness. We will not treat this lightly." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "Promises are wind, Mr. Pierce. Action is weight. 90 days, no more." The line went quiet, the CEO's silence speaking louder than words. Sofia lifted her phone higher, narrating. "Everyone, the CEO himself has just promised to review. Marcus Grant has forced the top of the company to respond live. We are witnessing corporate history." Passengers began murmuring. A man in 2C whispered, "I've flown for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this." A woman in 4A pressed her palms together as if in prayer, whispering, "Please let this be the start of something new." But not everyone found hope. Thomas leaned forward, his voice bitter. "You think you've won, Marcus. You think this will stick. Corporations have a way of burying things, of waiting until the cameras turn off." Marcus turned toward him, his expression cool but unflinching. "Then let them try, because the cameras won't turn off. The truth is already alive in millions of homes, in millions of minds, and once dignity is demanded, it can never again be silenced." Sofia's livestream counter jumped again. 4 million viewers, 4.2, 4.5. Comments exploded. "Never forget this. Aurora must pay. Marcus Grant is a legend." Emily sobbed softly into her hands. Patricia finally lowered the satellite phone, her arm heavy, her chest aching. She looked at Marcus, her voice breaking. "Do you hate me now?" Marcus's gaze softened, not warm, not forgiven, but measured. "I don't hate you. Hatred changes nothing. But I will not excuse you. You made a choice today, Miss Owens. You chose procedure over principle. You chose silence over courage. That is what must change not just in you, but in every person wearing that uniform." Patricia's tears slipped free. She nodded, unable to speak, her shame overwhelming her. The intercom crackled suddenly, Captain Reynolds' voice filling the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. By order of the Board of Directors, we are cleared to proceed to San Francisco. Please remain seated. First-class service will be temporarily suspended while an internal review is conducted. Thank you for your cooperation." The announcement landed strangely. Relief mingled with tension. The flight would go on, but nothing about this felt ordinary. As the engines roared louder, pushing the plane toward the runway, Marcus glanced out the window. The city skyline shimmered in the distance. He thought of his father, of every injustice endured in silence. He thought of the boardroom awaiting him in San Francisco, the merger papers, the choices that would shape the airline's future. For the first time since the confrontation began, Marcus felt the heaviness in his chest. He had won a battle, but battles took their toll. He wondered if the world would truly change, or if, once the headlines faded, people would retreat to comfort and prejudice. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself. His voice echoed in his own mind. Power is not in shouting louder. Power is in making them fall silent long enough to hear the truth. Sophia, watching him through her camera, whispered into her phone. Look at him. Calm, unshaken. This man just rewrote history without leaving his seat. The viewers surged again. 5 million, 5.5, 6 million. In the cabin, people sat with their own silent reckonings. The elderly woman in 3A squeezed her husband's hand tightly, whispering, "We can't stay silent anymore." Thomas sat rigid, sweating, his mind racing with calculations what clients might think, what contracts he might lose. Emily wept quietly, knowing her life was split in two before and after this flight. Patricia stared at the floor, ashamed but perhaps for the first time in years, open to change. And Marcus Grant, the man once accused of fraud for simply sitting in his seat, remained steady. The storm had raged around him, but he had not moved. The aircraft lifted off the ground, wheels leaving the earth behind. The cabin shuddered, engines roaring as the plane climbed into the sky. It was a fitting metaphor. This was no longer about descent into shame. It was about ascent into something new. Marcus opened his briefcase once more, pulling out his newspaper, calmly, deliberately. He unfolded it and began to read again, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But everyone knew. Nothing would ever be the same. 2 weeks after Flight 227, the boardroom of Aurora Airlines' San Francisco headquarters looked nothing like the pristine glass temple it had once been. The walls, that usually gleamed with charts of rising profits, were now lined with news clippings and legal documents, each one a scar of the storm unleashed from Seat 1A. On a large screen at the far end of the room, replayed footage from Sophia Ramirez's live stream flickered. Marcus Grant sat in calm defiance, his voice carrying across millions of devices. This was never about a seat. This is about dignity, and dignity is the most valuable asset you will ever own. The video had reached over 40 million views worldwide. Hashtags trended across continents. News anchors repeated his words. Universities began dissecting the confrontation in classrooms. Investors asked questions Aurora executives couldn't dodge. Jonathan Pierce sat at the head of the boardroom table, his once steady hands now restless. He looked older, worn, as if the weight of the past fortnight had stolen years from him. His directors whispered anxiously, but no one dared raise their voice. Then the door opened. Marcus entered, tailored in a charcoal suit, his stride calm yet commanding. The room shifted instantly. Conversation stopped, chairs straightened, eyes followed. He didn't need to introduce himself. His presence alone announced who he was. "Mr. Grant," Jonathan said, rising to his feet. "Thank you for coming. We're prepared to discuss the terms you laid out." Marcus set his briefcase on the table and slowly took a seat, his composure as steady as it had been on the plane. "The terms are not for discussion," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "They are for implementation." The directors shifted uneasily. One, a silver-haired man named Howard Klein, leaned forward. "Mr. Grant," with respect. "The financial implications, body cameras, audits, training programs, these will push us into the red. We cannot overhaul the system in 90 days. Marcus met his gaze, unblinking. "You cannot afford not to. How much value did you lose in the week after the incident? 23% of market cap, billions erased overnight, customers fleeing, investors demanding answers. That is the price of arrogance. This," he gestured to the folder of reforms, "is the cost of survival." Jonathan pressed his palms together, his voice quiet. "We accept the timeline. The board has voted unanimously. 90 days. All 5 demands." Marcus nodded once, not triumphant, not smug, simply satisfied. "Good. Then perhaps Aurora Airlines has a chance to earn back what it lost." In that moment, Patricia Owens, now reassigned to corporate operations, entered the boardroom. Her face was pale but resolute. She had volunteered to testify before the board, to own her mistakes. "Mr. Grant," she began softly, "I want to say I was wrong. My choices humiliated you, and by extension, millions who saw themselves in you. I can't undo that, but I can learn. If this company truly changes, it won't be because of executives in suits. It will be because of the people who enforce policies every day." Marcus regarded her carefully. She braced herself for condemnation. Instead, he spoke gently. "Acknowledging failure is the first step toward reform. I do not need your apology for myself. I need it for every future passenger who might sit in seat 1A. If you commit to being part of the solution, then your failure becomes a lesson." Patricia's eyes glistened. She nodded, silently vowing not to waste the second chance. Weeks turned into months. Aurora Airlines implemented the Grant Protocol body cameras for all staff, mandatory civil rights training, quarterly public diversity audits, and a direct escalation line for discrimination complaints. The airline bled millions in upfront costs, but something unexpected happened. Customers returned. Minority communities that had sworn never to fly Aurora again began booking flights. Satisfaction scores soared, lawsuits plummeted, journalists called it the dignity dividend. CNN aired a special from Seat 1, A to Corporate Reform, How Marcus Grant Changed Aviation. Forbes put his face on its cover, the man who made dignity profitable. Business schools worldwide dissected the incident as a case study, calling it the Grant Protocol. But for Marcus, the spotlight was secondary. His true satisfaction came from letters he received. A young black man wrote, "Because of you, I no longer fear boarding a plane." A Latina flight attendant wrote, "Your fight forced my company to see me as more than a uniform." A father from Chicago wrote, I showed my daughter your video. She said, "That man looks like us." And, for the first time, she believed she belonged. 1 year later, at Harvard Business School, a packed lecture hall studied the case. On the screen appeared the iconic image Marcus seated calmly in 1A. A flight attendant's finger pointed accusingly at him, his newspaper folded neatly in his lap. The caption beneath read, "Power isn't granted. It's recognized when used with purpose." Professors explained how a single confrontation reshaped an entire industry. Students debated the intersection of morality and markets, of dignity and profit. And always, Marcus's name came up, no longer just as a CEO, but as a symbol. Meanwhile, Thomas Whitaker's world unraveled. His arrogance on the plane had cost him a $30 million client, who terminated their contract citing values misalignment. Within 6 months, his firm forced him to resign. He wrote a memoir, "The Seat I Didn't Deserve," in which he admitted his entitlement and the humiliation that forced him to change. Surprisingly, it became a bestseller, not for its business insight, but for its raw honesty. Emily Foster, the flight attendant who had triggered the confrontation, disappeared from aviation. But months later, she reappeared as a law student, supported by a scholarship funded through Aurora's new diversity program. At a civil rights conference, she spoke publicly for the first time. "Once, I pointed at a man and tried to strip him of his place. Today, I'm studying so I can defend others who are denied theirs." Patricia Owens devoted herself to employee reform inside Aurora, ensuring that every new hire learned not just procedures, but principles. Her work became a model for other airlines, and Marcus. He refused to bask in celebrity. He turned down talk shows, declined book deals, rarely accepted interviews. He told colleagues, "I was never trying to be a hero. I was trying to sit in my seat and be treated with dignity." Yet, when asked to speak at the United Nations Annual Summit on Commerce and Human Rights, he accepted. On stage in New York, beneath the blue UN emblem, Marcus addressed a hall filled with diplomats and CEOs. His voice was steady, carrying the same weight it had in the cabin. Fairness is not a luxury. Dignity is not optional. They are the foundation of commerce itself. Profit without respect is theft. Power without justice is tyranny. And let me remind you of this in the 21st century. Discrimination is not only immoral, it is unprofitable. The chamber erupted in applause. Delegates rose to their feet. Cameras flashed. Headlines the next day called it the speech that redefined capitalism. Months later, Aurora Airlines unveiled a plaque in every first-class cabin. It was small, brushed silver, mounted discreetly above Seat 1A. The engraving read, "Seat 1A, the birthplace of the Grant Protocol. Respect is our core value." Passengers began posting photos with the plaque, sharing them under the hashtag #DignityFirst. It became a symbol, not just of an airline's reform, but of a global movement. And in Chicago, Marcus Grant sat in his office overlooking Lake Michigan. On his desk, next to stacks of merger reports and investment briefs, lay a single object, the old boarding pass that read Seat 1A, Flight 227. He kept it not as a reminder of humiliation, but as proof of resistance. At times, he would pause, gazing out at the shimmering skyline, hearing his father's voice in memory. Power is not in shouting louder. Power is in making them listen when they'd rather not. The world had listened, and it had changed. And so, from one seat on one plane, History was written. Marcus Grant showed the world that dignity is not just a personal right. It is a force powerful enough to bring a multi-billion-dollar company to its knees and to lift it back up, transformed. We watched as arrogance crumbled, as prejudice was exposed under the glare of millions of live-stream viewers, and as the truth calm, steady, undeniable, took its place at the center of the cabin. From humiliation came reform. From injustice came the Grant Protocol. But this story is not just about Marcus. It's about all of us. How many times have we stayed silent when someone was pushed aside? How many times have we accepted procedure instead of demanding principle? The question lingers, what seat will you refuse to surrender? Aurora Airlines survived, but only because change was forced upon it. And the lesson echoes beyond aviation into every company, every boardroom, every customer interaction. Respect is not optional. Dignity is not negotiable. If this story touched you, let it be more than a video. Share it, so others hear it. Like it, so it rises. Subscribe, so you never miss the stories that remind us what truly matters. Respect first, profit second, humanity always.